Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we really get into a stack of sources, pull them apart, and try to hand you the most important, maybe the most surprising bits of knowledge.
That's the
And
word.
today we're tackling something that, well, it definitely sparks the imagination. Water in your car engine.
Mm-hmm.
You hear these stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when gas prices shoot up. The water-powered car. Sounds amazing, like free energy from your tap.
The ultimate dream.
Exactly. But look, there are some seriously wild tales, and let's be honest, some deep-rooted myths tied up with this whole idea.
And that's really what we're here to unpack today. Because, while that pure water-powered car idea, that's pretty much a myth, of a very persistent one.
Right.
But water can play this really fascinating performance-boosting role in regular internal combustion engines. And there's real science there.
Okay.
So we've gathered, a whole stack of stuff, engineering papers, research, some historical accounts, even the claims and the debunking.
Whole spectrum.
The whole thing. And the mission is basically to sort the fact from the fiction for you. What can water actually do in an engine versus what's just, wishful thinking?
All right, so we know the big myth, the water-powered car. Let's put that aside for a second. Where does the real story start? Where does water actually, work in an engine?
Okay, yeah, good place to start. We need to talk about something called water injection.
Water injection.
Okay, this is the real deal. Sometimes it's called anti-detonant injection, or ADI.
Anti-detonant, so it stops knocking.
Exactly. That's a key part of it. Its main job is to cool down the fuel-air mixture going into the cylinders, or sometimes even cool the combustion chamber itself. And the result? More power, and interestingly, often better fuel economy, too.
How does it do that, though, just spraying water in?
Well, it's a bit more sophisticated than just like hosing it down.
Great.
It involves injecting a very, very fine mist atomized water, or sometimes a water alcohol mix, into the engine's intake. The key is evaporative cooling. You know how sweating cools you down? Water absorbs a ton of heat when it turns from liquid to vapor. So this superfine mist evaporates almost instantly inside the hot engine, soaking up heat like crazy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
But you mentioned this isn't exactly new tech.
Oh, not at all. And this is one of the really surprising parts I've found, too. People think it's a modern trick.
Yeah, maybe something from racing or tuning in the last decade or two.
Right. But its roots actually go way back. We're talking World War II.
World War II, seriously.
Seriously. It was a critical piece of technology in German fighter planes. It allowed them to dramatically boost engine power. Think going from like 1,700 horsepower up to maybe 2,400 for short bursts.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
It gave them a real edge, yeah. In those planes, they used it for high-demand situations, takeoff, combat maneuvers, that sort of thing. It gave more thrust, but crucially, it also stopped the engine from knocking or detonating under that extreme pressure.
So it let them run leaner, more powerful fuel settings without blowing up the engine.
Essentially, yes. It really shows how effective the core principle is. It's battlefield-proven tech.
Okay, fascinating history lesson. But I'm not flying a WWI fighter, unfortunately.
Okay.
So how does that old idea work in, say, my turbocharged car today?
Good question. So in a modern setup, you typically inject the water or the water alcohol mix into the air after it's already been compressed by the turbocharger.
That's right, the turbo. Okay.
Yeah. Usually when the boost pressure hits a certain point, you need a pretty beefy high-pressure pump, maybe pushing 200 psi, and special nozzles to get that really fine atomization we talked about.
That fine mist is key then.
Absolutely critical. It has to evaporate almost instantly to get that cooling effect right where you need it. And when that intake air gets cooled down...
It gets denser.
Exactly. Cooler air is denser air, which means it holds more oxygen. More oxygen means you can burn more fuel efficiently in the same cylinder volume.
Which means more power.
More power potential, yes.
Ah.
But here's the other big win, especially for anyone into tuning their car. That water, or water alcohol mix, drastically increases the fuel's resistance to knocking. Its effective octane rating goes way up.
Ah, so you can run more boost pressure. Or advance the ignition timing more aggressively.
Both. It gives tuners so much more headroom, as they call it. You can push the engine harder safely without it pre-igniting or detonating, which can wreck an engine fast.
Okay, that sounds pretty significant. I mean, I've seen claims online, sometimes pretty wild ones, like 40% more power. Is that even realistic?
With the right setup, especially with a powerful turbocharger that can supply the extra air, gains like that, maybe not always 40% on the dot, but significant power increases are definitely possible. Yes.
Wow.
And think about this. Unlike a traditional intercooler, which sits outside the engine and cools the air before it goes in, potentially causing some pressure drop, water injection cools inside the engine, basically, without that boost pressure loss. Plus, it actively cools the combustion process itself.
So better for engine life, maybe?
Yeah.
Less heat stress.
That's the idea. It reduces the thermal load on pistons, valves, everything. It can also lower exhaust gas temperatures, which is good news for your turbocharger's lifespan.
Any other benefits? Efficiency. Emissions.
Yeah, actually. By allowing for more optimal tuning, it can sometimes lead to lower specific fuel consumption. And it's known to reduce certain emissions, like NOx and CO. In diesel engines, it's particularly effective at cutting down both NOx, sometimes by huge amounts, like 85%, and SIT.
So it's kind of like a booster shot for existing tuning, like if you've already done chip tuning.
That's a great way to put it. It's a super addition, you could say. If chip tuning pushes the engine harder, water injection helps manage the extra heat and knock risk that comes with it. It solves problems created by making more power.
Okay, this sounds genuinely useful, not just for racers. Has it actually shown up in regular production cars that you or I could buy?
It has, though often in sort of special performance models. Way back, the 1962 Oldsmobile Jetfire actually had a system.
62.
Yeah, and Saab, they were kind of famous for it. Their 1978-99 Turbo S used it for an extra 15-20 horsepower. They used it on the Saab 900 Enduro too.
Okay. Any recent examples?
Absolutely. The BMW M4 GTS, the one from 2015, that uses water injection. It bumps the power by about 50 horsepower up to nearly 500.
So BMW is definitely using it now.
Yeah, and actually Bosch worked with BMW on that system. They call it Water Boost. Bosch claims it can give up to 5% more performance, cut CO2 by 4%, and improve fuel economy by as much as 13%.
13% better fuel economy. That's huge.
It's a significant claim, yeah. Shows the potential when it's integrated properly from the factory. And like I said, it's used in diesels too, mainly for those big knock and sit reductions.
Right. So it works. It's got history. It's even in some modern performance cars.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's listening and thinking, okay, I want this for my project car, what do they need to know? Like, what fluid actually goes in the tank? Can I just use water from my sink?
Good question, and a really important one. No, definitely not tap water. Minerals. Tap water has calcium, magnesium, all sorts of stuff. Over time, that builds up as limescale inside the system, clogging the pump, the lines, and especially those very fine nozzles. It can even leave deposits inside your engine.
Okay, so distilled water only.
Distilled water is the way to go if you're running only water. But for the best performance, especially the anti-knock benefits, most people use a mix of water and alcohol. It's often called water-alcohol engine system.
Water and alcohol, like methanol.
Or ethanol.
Both are used. The sort of classic high-performance mix is often around 70% distilled water and 30% methanol. Methanol adds extra cooling and octane boost, and it helps prevent carbon buildup, too.
Methanol sounds potent.
It is, and that brings us to safety, which is critical here.
Okay, let's talk safety. What are the risks with methanol?
Look, methanol is nasty stuff if you don't respect it. It's toxic, it can be absorbed through your skin, and ingesting even small amounts can cause blindness or death. It's also highly flammable.
Flammable, okay. And the really scary part is if it catches fire, especially pure methanol, it burns with an almost invisible blue flame. You might not even know it's burning until it's too late.
Yikes. So that 70-30 mix,
Yeah.
is that safe? What about higher concentrations?
For safety reasons, it's really strongly advised not to go above a 50% methanol concentration. So a 50-50 mix with water is often seen as a safer alternative. The performance gains beyond 50% methanol are minimal, if any, but the risks increase significantly. Just be extremely careful with methanol. Treat it like hazardous material because it is.
Okay, message received. Extreme caution with methanol. Stick to 50-50 or less, or just use distilled water if you want to be safest.
Pretty much, yeah. You can also use ethanol instead of methanol, often in a 50.50 mix with water. Ethanol is, easier to get hold of. It's basically high-proof alcohol. Performance is slightly less than methanol, but it's generally considered safer to handle.
Right, so you've got your fluid sorted. What about the actual hardware? What's involved in installing one of these kits? Is it a weekend DIY job?
It can be, for someone comfortable working on cars. The basic kit has a few main parts. A tank to hold the fluid, maybe a gallon, maybe 5 gallons, depending on how much you use.
Right.
Then you've got that high pressure pump we mentioned, pushing around 200 psi. You need a controller, usually electronic, that tells the pump when to turn on and how much fluid to inject based on boost pressure or engine load.
And the nozzle?
And the crucial nozzle, or sometimes multiple nozzles, to atomize the fluid. Placement is important too.
Where does it go?
Generally, you want the tank mounted lower than the nozzle and the nozzle higher than the tank. That prevents fluid just dribbling into the engine when the sister's off due to gravity or siphoning.
Makes sense. And the nozzle itself?
Ideally, you place it in the intake track, somewhere between 6 to 8 inches before the throttle body. It needs to be after the mass airflow sensor and any intercooler, so you get good mixing with the air going into the engine.
Gotcha. And you mentioned tuning earlier. Is that absolutely necessary?
To get the real benefits, yeah, pretty much. Just bolting on a kit might give you a little safety margin, maybe cool things down slightly. But to unlock that extra power, you need to tune the engine's computer, the ECU, to take advantage of the higher effective octane.
How high are we talking?
With a good 50-50 water-methanol mix and regular premium pump gas, say 91 or 93 octane, you can tune the engine as if it's running on race fuel, like 110 octane or even higher.
Wow. That's where the power comes from.
That's where the potential for big power gains comes from, yes. Allows much more aggressive timing and boost.
What about keeping it running? Maintenance?
Pretty straightforward, really.
Yeah.
Keep the tank topped up, obviously. And periodically, you might need to check and clean the nozzle to make sure it isn't getting clogged.
And what if you do run out of fluid? Especially if you've tuned the engine aggressively to rely on it. That sounds bad.
It could be very bad, yeah. Running high boost and aggressive timing without the water injection's cooling and anti-knock effect could lead to detonation and serious engine damage.
So how do systems prevent that?
Good systems have safety features built in. A common one is often called a boost-safe output or something similar. It's a signal the controller sends out if it detects a problem like the tank is empty, or the pump fails, or there's a leak.
What does that signal do?
You wire it into your engine management system or a boost controller. If the failsafe triggers, it can automatically tell the engine to pull back ignition timing or reduce the turbo boost pressure, or both. Basically, it detunes the engine on the fly to protect itself until the water injection is working again.
Okay, that's a pretty crucial safety net.
Absolutely essential if you're tuning aggressively.
Still, even with safety nets, having to constantly refill that tank. That sounds like the biggest drawback for everyday use.
That really is the main practical hurdle, yeah. For a race car or a weekend toy, maybe it's fine. But for your daily driver, constantly checking and refilling another fluid would get old fast.
So is there any way around that? Or is that just the price you pay?
Well, this is where some really interesting future-thinking concepts come in. People are looking at onboard water generation.
Generating water in the car. How?
Yeah, the idea is seen as maybe the key enabler to make this tech mainstream someday. Trying to pull water from the air, like humidity or collecting rainwater. Probably too unreliable.
Right.
But the really promising source is the engine's own exhaust.
Exhaust. How does that work?
When you burn gasoline, one of the main byproducts besides CO2 is water vapor. Lots of it. Roughly speaking, for every liter or gallon of gas you burn, you produce about the same amount of water vapor in the exhaust.
Huh. Never thought about that.
So the idea is to have a system that can condense that water vapor out of the hot exhaust gases, collect it, purify it maybe, and then feed it back into the water injection tank.
A closed loop system, basically.
Exactly. If you could perfect that, you'd potentially eliminate the need for refilling altogether. That could be a game changer.
That is fascinating. So if they crack that, could we see water injection on like a regular family sedan?
Well, technically possible, perhaps, but there's another hurdle: legality.
Ah, right. Is this stuff street legal?
Generally speaking, in most places, aftermarket water injection systems are intended for motorsport or off-road use only. They usually don't have the official approvals or certifications like an ABE or TÜV approval in Europe for use on public roads.
So even if you solve the refilling, it's still mostly a mod for track days or specialized vehicles, not your average commuter car.
As it stands today, yeah, that's pretty much the case. Getting it factory installed, like the BMW M4 GTS, is different, but adding it yourself afterwards usually puts you in a gray area legally for street driving.
Okay, so water injection. Real science, real benefits, especially for performance, but with practical and legal considerations.
Well summarized.
But that brings us back to the other side of the coin, the big myth. The idea that you can ditch gasoline entirely and just run your car on water.
Ah, yes. The legend.
And the name that always comes up first is Stanley Meyer, right?
Stanley Meyer. Yeah, he's probably the most famous proponent, or maybe infamous, depending on your view. He made huge waves back in the 80s and 90s.
What was his claim exactly?
He claimed he'd invented a revolutionary water fuel cell that could power a car using ordinary water as its only fuel. He even had a dune buggy he demonstrated it with, generated massive media attention, attracted investors, the whole 9 yards.
A car that runs only on water. How do you say it worked?
His explanation involved using electricity less electricity than conventional electrolysis. He claimed to split water, H2O, into hydrogen, H2, and oxygen, O2. Then, he said, you burn that hydrogen in the engine, which combines it back with oxygen, releasing energy and producing water again.
Wait, so split water, burn the hydrogen, make water.
Exactly. A closed loop, a perpetual motion machine, effectively.
Which sounds impossible. What does basic physics say about that?
Basic physics says, nope, doesn't work. It fundamentally violates the laws of thermodynamics.
The laws you can't break.
The ones you really can't break, no matter how clever you think you are. First law, energy cannot be created or destroyed. Second law, no energy conversion process is 100% efficient. You always lose some, usually as waste heat.
So splitting water takes energy.
Precisely. It takes a certain amount of energy to break the chemical bonds in water molecules. And when you recombine hydrogen and oxygen to form water, you get exactly that same amount of energy back in an ideal, perfectly efficient world.
But the real world isn't perfectly efficient.
Never. So in reality, because of inefficiencies in electrolysis in the engine everywhere, you always have to put more energy in to split the water than you get out from burning the hydrogen. You're always running at an energy deficit. It just cannot work as a primary fuel source like that.
So what happened to Meyer and his invention? Did anyone ever prove it worked or prove it didn't?
Well, it ended up in court. Investors sued him. And in 1996, an Ohio court found him guilty of gross and egregious fraud.
Or fraud, again?
Yeah, expert witnesses examined his claims and technology and basically confirmed it didn't work as advertised. He was using known electrolysis principles but making impossible claims about efficiency and energy generation.
But then there's the story of his death, right? That fuels a lot of conspiracy theories.
It does. In 1998, Meyer was at a restaurant meeting with some potential Belgian investors. He reportedly drank some cranberry juice, then suddenly grabbed his neck, ran outside, and collapsed, allegedly saying, "They poisoned me before he died."
They poisoned me. That's pretty dramatic.
Extremely. But the official autopsy and police investigation concluded he died of a cerebral aneurysm. He apparently had a history of high blood pressure.
But the timing, the alleged last words, people latched onto that, didn't they? Claiming he was murdered.
Oh, absolutely. The conspiracy theory quickly emerged that he was assassinated by oil companies, car manufacturers, the government, you name it, to suppress his revolutionary water fuel technology.
Is there any truth to that? Or is the fraud verdict the end of the story?
Look, the suppression theory makes for a good story, but the evidence just isn't there. Here's the thing. Meyer's patents are public knowledge. They've expired now, meaning anyone can use his designs for free.
Right, so if it worked...
If it actually worked, don't you think someone, some company, some country not beholden to big oil would have built it by now? Especially with today's focus on alternative energy.
Yeah, you'd think so.
The fact that absolutely no reputable manufacturer or research institution has ever successfully replicated or implemented his water fuel cell speaks volumes. It reinforces the court's finding. It was based on flawed science, impossible claims. It was fraud. There was nothing revolutionary to suppress.
It's amazing how persistent that myth is, though.
It really is. And I think, the reason it persists is interesting. It taps into that deep-seated desire for free, clean energy, for sticking it to the man, for that silver bullet solution. It's a powerful narrative, even if the science says no.
And it's not just Meyer-specific claims. You still see stuff online today about, like, HHO generators, right? Kits you can supposedly add to your car.
Oh, yeah, those are still kicking around. HHO, or sometimes Brown's gas. These are usually little electrolysis units that you install in your car, hook up to the battery, and fill with water.
And the claim is...
The claim is that by using your car's electrical system to electrolyze water on the fly, producing a mix of hydrogen and oxygen, HHO, and feeding that gas into the engine's intake, you can drastically improve fuel economy. Sometimes they claim 15%, sometimes 50%, sometimes even 100% or more, or that you can run just on water.
Okay, but based on what we just discussed about electrolysis, that sounds suspicious. Does it actually work? Has anyone tested these things properly?
It sounds suspicious because it runs into the exact same thermodynamic problem. You're using the car's alternator, driven by the engine burning gasoline, to generate electricity. That electricity then splits water, which takes more energy than you get back from burning the tiny amount of HHO produced.
You're losing energy overall.
You have to be. And yes, reputable places have tested them. Popular Mechanics did a thorough test a while back on one of these HHO kits. Their finding, quote, "Fuel economy is exactly the same."
Exactly the same.
Yep. The only thing they noticed was that the car's electrical system voltage dropped when the HHO generator was running, showing it was just an extra electrical load on the engine, consuming power, not saving fuel.
But wait, what about the argument I sometimes hear that HHO isn't supposed to be the fuel, but it's like an enabler, that it lets you do other things to save fuel?
That's the fallback argument, yeah. Proponents will say the HHO itself isn't providing the energy, but it somehow allows the engine to burn gasoline much more efficiently, maybe by allowing you to run the engine extremely lean, with way more air than fuel, or by enabling other mods like fuel preheaters.
Was there anything to that?
Well, some people, especially with older, simpler diesel truck engines, have claimed modest fuel economy gains, maybe 10–12%, after installing an HHO kit and making significant other modifications, like drastically leaning out the fuel mixture or messing with timing.
But is it the HHO doing it?
Almost certainly not. The problem is, those other modifications running super lean, messing with fuel delivery and timing, are often tampering with the engine's designed operating parameters and, crucially, its emissions control systems.
Oh, so illegal for road use.
Very likely illegal for road use in most places, yes.
Huh.
These modifications often bypass or disable federally mandated emissions controls. Your car wouldn't pass a smog check. So any fuel savings reported are probably due to those independent, often illegal, mods, not the HHO generator itself, which is still just an energy drain.
So the official word is basically, these things don't work as claimed.
Pretty much. The U.S. Department of Energy has looked into fuel-saving devices for years, and their conclusion is consistently that very few, if any, aftermarket gadgets actually improve fuel economy, and some can even damage your engine or increase harmful emissions. It's best to be extremely skeptical.
Okay, so if water-powered cars are a dead end, scientifically speaking, where is the real progress happening in making cars greener, moving away from just gasoline?
Well, that's where you see the contrast with real engineering and investment. You look at major automakers like Toyota, who've been pioneers in hybrid technology for decades. Now they're also investing heavily in hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
Fuel cells are different, right? They use hydrogen, but not by burning it.
Correct. A fuel cell vehicle electrochemically combines hydrogen stored in a tank with oxygen from the air to produce electricity, which then powers electric motors to drive the wheels. The only emission is water vapor. It's complex technology, but it's scientifically sound.
And of course, battery electric vehicles.
And massive investment in battery electric cars, especially seeing places like China really push that technology forward. These are the real-world pathways being pursued. Hybrids, hydrogen fuel cells, EVs based on established science and serious engineering, not on violating the laws of physics.
Right. So, wrapping this all up then, it seems like we have two very different stories about water and engines.
Absolutely. On one hand, you've got water injection. Real science. Fascinating history going back to WWII aircraft. Proven benefits for performance, especially in turbocharged or supercharged engines. It works by cooling the intake charge, preventing knock, allowing more aggressive tuning.
But it has practical considerations using distilled water or water-alcohol mix, needing a system installed, often requiring tuning, and the legality for road use is murky.
Exactly. It's a legitimate performance enhancement tool, mainly for forced induction in competition or specialized use cases right now.
And then on the other hand,
You have the water-powered car, Stanley Meyer, HHO kits, the perpetual motion dream. And that, based on everything we know about physics, is firmly in the realm of myth and, frankly, pseudoscience. It just doesn't work because you can't get more energy out than you put in.
a persistent myth, though.
Incredibly persistent. And I think that persistence itself is interesting, that human desire for a breakthrough, for free or near-free energy is so powerful, it drives amazing innovation when channeled correctly.
But it also makes us susceptible to claims that sound too good to be true, maybe.
For sure. It fuels these myths that just won't die, despite the scientific evidence. It shows how much we want to believe in revolutionary solutions.
So maybe the final thought for you, listening, is to think about that. This whole topic blends hard science with enduring fiction, real engineering with, well, wishful thinking. What does that tell us about how we chase energy solutions, how we view science, and what our hopes are for the future of how we get around? What are we willing to believe, and how well do we actually understand the science that governs it all? Something to chew on.
Definitely something to think about.